All right. Well, I want to thank all of you for taking the time to come out here. We are not at all surprised by the size of the crowd here. This is obviously a very important issue for all of you. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Jim Roos. I am the mayor of Palos Verdes Estates. With me tonight, I also have Council Member Michael Kemps. The two of us are part of an ad hoc committee that the council put together after we received our first draft response from HCD on our housing element. And if that doesn't mean anything to you, my hope is by the evening it will mean something to you. With me also we have our new city manager, Elaine Zhang. Elaine just started in July. We hired her. She was the city manager in Rolling Hills. She knows the Hill very well. She lives right here in the South Bay. We're super lucky to have her. And then we also have on the end is Cheryl Brady, who is our Director of Community Development, which would be like our planning director. And then seated next to her is Gina Geiser, who is, she's a consultant with CSG Consulting, and CSG Consulting is the firm that the city has hired to assist us with drafting our housing element. I want to start by assuring all of you that Michael and I, and probably the rest of the council, we can only speak for ourselves here tonight, but the two of us share your concern and your frustration about this situation. Both of us have been outspoken supporters of local control in land use decisions. Both of us are supporters of neighborhood compatibility as a guiding principle of our community development. And both of us are committed to doing everything that we can to protect our city's character. I know many of you are here tonight because you have specific concerns about the draft housing element that was published recently on the city's website. And I want to assure you that is not a final document. Michael and I had been tasked as the ad hoc to come up with recommendations. The two of us at least are in agreement that substantial changes need to be made to that draft. We expect that our colleagues on the council will agree with that when we bring it back to them, and you can expect additional changes and more opportunities for you to have input on this process as we proceed. But given the interest in it recently, we wanted to make sure that everyone got the opportunity to learn what is the housing element, what are we doing, why do we have to do it, what are the options for responding to it, and that's what I hope that you guys go home with tonight. And with that, I will turn it over to our city manager, who is going to kind of officiate tonight and keep things moving. We want to try and hear from as many people as possible and answer as many questions, and Elaine will try to guide us through that.
Yes, good evening, good evening. Thank you for being here. I'm hoping you're enjoying the wine and the cheese provided by Councilmember Kemps over there. Thank you. I want to just get to have you tell us what your thoughts are, but I wanted to set some sort of friendly rules here. There's so many of you, and I wanted to get to everybody. And so here's the format that we're going to conduct. We're going to have Gina kind of run through a few slides just to kind of run through the basic information so that we're all working off of the same info in this room. Then we're going to go to taking comments and questions, and I'm going to be walking around with a mic. A lot of you have asked me, where do I submit the comment card? You don't need to submit a comment card. Just stand where you are, raise your hand, and I'm gonna try and spread the love across the room. So be really patient with me. But I also want to say this: you can see your neighbors in the area, in this room. And so if you start to go over a few minutes longer, your neighbors may not like you. So I just want to make sure you understand that your neighbors are judging you for how much time you're taking. So with that, I think we can get started. If there's any issues, if you could just raise your hand. But I will try to get to everybody, and I'll also poll whether if that question addresses some of the things that are in the room. So please be patient, and we're gonna come and hear your thoughts. Gina?
Good evening. Thank you all for your time. I will be as brief as possible. Again, I'm Gina Gazar with CSG Consultants. So we're really going to get you up to speed of where we are now. So our plan is to, by September 26th, review the comments received during the public period that occurred over the last few months, and that was open to all, and also review the comments received tonight and leading up to tonight. By October 10th, we hope to have the City Council receive direction from the ad hoc committee on the timing for submitting a draft to the state to receive informal comments. The state will have 60 days to respond to those comments. So by October 16th, if all goes well, we could submit a draft for informal comments and then receive those comments by the 16th of December. So that is our preliminary plan. No formal submittal or final action would be taken before then. So up to date, get you back up to speed. So the deadline for the housing element to be certified was February of last year. So we're over a year and a half behind. So there was a draft that was submitted 2 Octobers ago, almost 2 years ago. There were, like Mayor Roos said, we had received comments from the state. There was a subsequent draft, and council did review and adopt a version of the document that went back to the state, and further comments were received. In that time, we have gone through many iterations and led up to the joint Planning Commission Council meeting that occurred in May. So what is a housing element? It is required by the state. It's a planning document, and it sets goals for housing in the city. Every city in the state is required, every city and county is required to prepare this document. And it's on an either 4-year or 8-year cycle. It really is an assessment of current and future needs for housing. And all cities need to meet their regional fair share. So again, the deadline was passed in February, and we want to emphasize that the city plans for this housing, but does not build it. The consequences of non-compliance, so if the city does not provide a housing element, the state can sue the city. And they are monitoring. There's a list ongoing of which cities are compliant, and they report this to the Attorney General. And the courts can fine the city up to $100,000 per month for non-compliance. They can also lose any potential grant funds, and they could also be subject to loss of local control, and we nickname this the builder's remedy, and that means that a developer with an application that has a certain amount of affordable housing can come in and build that, and the city will have no means to stop that. So Palos Verdes Estates has their own RENA allocation. It was 199 units. Every city had their own allocation. And the breakdown is, they're broken down by 4 income categories. I won't go into them, but there's low and, variations of low, moderate, and above moderate. The current draft has attempted to try and meet the RENA obligation, and of course you've seen that it's spread between the Lunada Bay area, the Malaga Cove area, and single-family lots that are vacant, and of course there are ADUs, accessory dwelling units, and the ADUs are, the number that was proposed is a number that will still be negotiated with the state we're making projections for the next 8 years that 10 ADUs could be permitted per year. So I wanted to emphasize that that there's a good mix of other types of units that would be spread about the city, potentially. All right, sorry about that. So quickly, I just wanted to illustrate what the site's inventory is because I think that's the biggest issue that we're having. So the site's inventory is what the city is proposing to accommodate the RENA obligation. And the state has very specific criteria. And for example, in one of our versions, we had some of the existing multifamily units that are currently in Malaga and Lunada. The state rejected those sites. So for example, one of the sites, it was too small. It only netted, you would have to basically tear down 4 units to build 5. You would net 1 unit, and the state said no. That's just one example of the criteria. They want to see the age, they want to see the likelihood that it would be redeveloped. And it's a really hard argument to make with the city, or justification with the city. They want very little environmental constraints. They want infrastructure. This is just some of the things that they're looking at, and I wanted to just really highlight that quickly so you can get a sense of what the city has been up against in trying to appease the state. Finally, I wanted to touch on the requirement for rezoning. So this is a new requirement by the state that any site that was used in a previous housing element, so in the past 8 years, the city had a document that did include Malaga, Cove, and Lunada Bay. Because those sites are proposed to be reused again, and they were not developed in the last 8 years, the state is now requiring that you rezone those. And there are other issues that are in play and regulations, but we won't get too much into the weeds now. I just wanted to make sure you understood that. And the rezoning and the by right zoning does not mean it's a free-for-all. A developer can't just come in and have the right to come in and do whatever they want. The city has the power to write in very strict development regulations. We call them objective design standards. The only caveat is there cannot be any discretionary action. There can't be a judgment call. But it still gives the city the right to write in very clear direction to what they would want in that area. And with that, I will conclude this short presentation. Hopefully it wasn't too long, and give it back to Elaine, so thank you.
Thank you, Gina. I'm going to do this. I'm going to start here. I'm going to take 3 comments. And then I'm going to go responses. Then I'll go there and take 3 comments and questions and responses. And I'll go over to that section and then I'll come right back. So know that I want to get to you, please. And for those that are sitting at the panel, we got our council members who's going to be answering policy questions. We got Gina, who will be answering technical questions, and Cheryl will just be really talking about process, if any questions in that. So can I take a volunteer on this side? Okay.
Hi, everyone. I am so impressed that everybody is here because this is what it's going to take to change things in Sacramento. Absolutely. I mean, the drumbeat in Sacramento is they want more affordable houses and more available housing. And they are prepared, and what they have done is they have taken our private property rights and taken the council's ability for property rights, and they have pushed them down to the point where we are tonight. So don't kill the messenger. The council is trying to do their best to do the least we can do. And they've been working out for a year and a half and hoping the state would go away. They're not going away. So what we need to do, first of all, is not pit our neighborhoods against each other. We're a city, and we need to act like a city. I've lived here 42 years. I adore this city. I live in Lenata Bay. But we have to work together, and we have to be part of fixing this problem as best we can. We have very little leeway. The state is making us do this, making us do a certain amount of units, and if we don't do it, they're gonna come in, and they're not gonna have any restrictions. They're just gonna let people do whatever they want. We never thought we'd have ADUs in this city. You know, we have our home association, we thought was something that would protect, okay, I gotta quiet. They don't have music here, so anyway, I just wanna thank everyone. We have to keep doing this. We have to get different people in Sacramento. They're making these rules. Anyway, thank you.
There's one right here earlier? No? You? Okay. And then I'm gonna.
Are there any cities that are banding together to form a class action lawsuit against Sacramento, the governor, or whatever?
There is a lawsuit, there's probably a couple, and it is possible we could join those. They're mostly larger cities than Palos Verdes estates. You know, I'm the wrong person to judge the likelihood that they're going to be successful. I think the challenge for us, even if we wanted to participate in litigation, is that we probably still have to continue to go through this process in earnest, or we expose ourselves to litigation, both from the state and from third parties acting on behalf of housing advocates. And being involved in a lawsuit isn't going to insulate us from those causes of action. So it's a policy choice we could consider. It doesn't solve the problem though.
Thank you.
Yes, hi, thank you. So quick question. So you mentioned that there is a list that the state's keeping and the state has the right to enforce and seek damages. That's great. Thank you for letting us know there's a list. But what's been happening? How large is the list? Has the state actually been using the enforcement means?
So the list is very long, but everyone on that list is still working through the process. Only those cities that have countersued the state have received backlash, and I know Huntington Beach has had some major issues and was forced to pay an affordable housing developer based on one of their revoked specific plans, which was it was associated with the housing element update, and it triggered a bunch of other back and forth. The other group of cities, it's still pending. There haven't been any consequences yet because it's relatively new.
There's a gentleman in the back asking about assembly bills, and I'm not sure if that's what they're asking for, but it's located on the screen here. Okay, on this side.
Hi. I spent some time reading through the housing element, and as a resident of Lenata Bay, one of my concerns is that I felt that there was too much of the burden was put on Lenata Bay for satisfying the state's housing mandate with the 55 units for very low income and low income out of 79. And in addition to that, when you take the density bonus into account, you can get up to another 100 to, not in addition to that, but a total of 100, and even theoretically as many as 120 units potentially. I'd really like to see the burden spread out more fairly across the community. I suggest that, instead of looking at Lanada Bay and all 3 sites in Lanada Bay, as we go back to something that was in the previous element where there was 1 site that we looked at identifying. I acknowledge that there's no place in Palos Verdes Estates that is perfect. This is a very difficult thing. If you look at the state standards, it's difficult to find anything that satisfies the criteria. The other concern I have is that I think that there was a lot of key information that was omitted from the housing element that adversely impacts Lanada Bay. One, there were sites listed in previous planning cycles that were not included. For example, the Malaga Cove Shopping Center and office area was, a large part of it was removed. There's also other sites in PBE. There's the St. Francis site that had been previously listed and was removed. There's the First Church of Christian Scientists. And then also the draft housing element fails to cover some pertinent information that I believe is required, in particular regarding leases on those sites that make it highly unlikely that those sites would be able to be developed within the planning cycle. So.
Thank you. Not going to be a popular neighbor, I think.
Breathe in.
Thanks, guys. Thanks. Okay, go ahead. Hi.
Let me hit it.
Sorry, it was a bad joke. I apologize. I don't know the
Clearly, he is a very popular neighbor. Can you hear me in the back? All right, cool. No? Okay, so is this better? The poor people in the front are going to have to have surgery when we're done tonight. Okay, so what I heard was, and you know what, let's do a show of hands, because maybe this will reduce the need to say it again and again. I heard spread it out more fairly. Yes. Well, that was the end of that meeting, just kidding. Consider 1 site, Lanada Bay versus 3 if possible. Oh, well, hold on. Sorry, I don't mean to make it long here. And then consider the other sites and consider leases on those sites. And Gina, maybe you can address.
0.
Excuse me. Hold it. Hold on. Time out. I appreciate your hands. That's what I was looking for. Let's be cordial and let's keep going. You're not going to get 0 sites. The state is requiring that we do this process. We will collaborate with you, and we will do so in a fair and timely way. We're here to listen to you. We actually are thrilled that you're here. We want to hear your input, but we're not going to suddenly violate state law and get the whole city sued and make you pay for it. Did you want to comment on the leases issue? Or can you?
Panelists, can we do this? Can we take a couple more comments? We decided to do 3 and then move on and response. Okay. So they're back here.
Did somehow the state legislature change the Constitution of California to make it so a charter city cannot be forced to do this sort of stuff?
My understanding, not being a lawyer, is that there are 2 lawsuits that are aggressively being pursued, one by general law cities, which we are, and another by charter cities, also to go after and enforce similar laws. I can't speak to the legality of whether or not they were forcefully pierced, but my understanding is that all of the laws that have been passed apply to both.
Good evening. My name's Simon Shober. I'm a proud resident of Lenada Bay for over a decade. Before I delve into the matters at hand tonight, I want to take a moment to offer my deepest condolences to Jim Nyman, a former mayor of PVE, and his family for his loss of his beloved wife Alice this past Sunday. Now, turning to the critical issue before us, I want to make it clear I recognise the importance of passing the housing element, and I do not oppose responsible development. However, I must passionately express my strong opposition to the current draft, particularly concerning the rezoning of the Lenada Bay commercial area to low-income housing. Let me begin by questioning the rationale behind the first point of the site selection process, which states no current residential uses were considered. It's worth noting that the state site inventory guidebook on page 5 suggests residentially zoned sites capable of higher density development can be included. Why was this not included or considered? Maybe you have an answer. Maybe we should explore the possibility of updating zoning requirements for existing residential apartment buildings within PVE to accommodate higher density. The prospects of losing any of our cherished Lenada Bay businesses to more high-density, low-income housing in Lenada Bay seems illogical and could jeopardise the unique charm of our Bayside community. I am particularly concerned about the recent state laws like builders' remedies, which incentivise developers to target rezoned areas. To paraphrase the Field of Dreams, if we zone it, the developers will come. These local businesses are essential for meeting the community's needs, and with limited parking already a challenge, state law challenges or changes the mandate minimum parking requirements could exacerbate the issue. Sorry. We should remember that all of PV is located in a very high fire severity zone. While the element does acknowledge this on page IV 51, it fails to account for this in each of the summary sites. Additionally, Lenada Bay is one of the furthest points from any exit in PVE, making it high-density buildings in this area questionable. The same guide I mentioned earlier in page 9 lists factors to consider when locating low-income housing, including proximity to transport, access to healthcare facilities and grocery stores. Lenada Bay, again, does not align with these criteria. If these facts were included, I would argue these sites would not be viable. Lastly, the viability of Site 2, Lenada Bay 1, needs to be questioned as environmental remedy costs at this gas station would be prohibitively high. My research suggests that it would be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. This draft incorrectly states that these costs would be minimal. Furthermore, it's also questionable why we would want to lose the only gas station in PVE, a facility that has served the community since 1955. In conclusion, I believe this draft needs to be rewritten.
I'm going to try and address. I'm going to try and address a couple of your concerns, and I'm going to let Gina speak to some technical things. First of all, I want to tell you that I agree completely. I think that Lenada Bay probably got too much in this draft, and we need to change that. There's a couple of things. So you asked about why other areas were not. So one of the challenges that we have is, as Gina was describing, every time we submit something to the state, they come back with comments about it. And among some of the first comments they gave us in the first draft was that we cannot select sites that have deed restrictions that would protect them from being developed in that manner. So if there is, that basically limits us to a handful of sites. Anything that is currently multifamily, which you suggested, the commercial areas which do not have deed restrictions against housing, and the couple of churches that you mentioned. So you know the sites, and we don't really have a lot of options beyond those.
But why can't we redevelop residential?
It's an interesting point, and certainly one that we can consider. There are probably some constraints there because some of those buildings, they're not apartment buildings, they're they're owned by multiple owners, and trying to consolidate all of those into a single owner for redevelopment is probably prohibitive, and the state wouldn't accept that. But some of those probably could be rezoned and allowed higher density. One other very important point that I want to make, because you said rezone for low-income housing, and I want to make sure everyone understands. The rezoning is not for low-income housing. The rezoning allows for the development of multifamily. And so when you see that at number 55, which is the number of units proposed in this draft, it's going to change. It'll probably be lower than that. That number is the number that someone would come in if they wanted to build all market rate condos there. So it doesn't necessarily mean, and a lot of this, if you want my personal opinion about a lot of what the state is driving, is trying to just give away to developers the opportunity to develop whatever they want. It's not really necessarily about developing low-income housing.
Mayor Roos, I think there's a gentleman here.
Excuse me. So that is I lost my train of thought, but the point is that the most likely outcome in any is that it would be redeveloped as market rate condos. One thing that I think personally is definitely wrong with this draft is that we do not state explicitly that we would put any commercial area that's like, whether it's a Malaga Cove or otherwise, that would that we would rezone. We can put an objective standard on it that would require that the first floor frontage remain retail. And that is not, in fact, it's explicitly excluded. It says that we wouldn't do that. I think as a policy matter, I would definitely support that. I suspect my colleagues would too. So, Gina, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I think I have a little bit to add on the existing residential. So you've got single family, detached primarily, and then you've got small pockets of multifamily. So in Lunada Bay, you've got 142 units. They average 34.4 DU per acre. The code only allows 24.9. So the existing multifamily is already well in excess, more intense than what is allowed by code. What we are proposing is only 25. It's in line what the city code already allows. It's 0.1 acres off. It's just, we try to create a standard that would be very similar to what is already existing. In Malaga Cove, the average density is 34.25 DU per acre. So that's also maxed out. There are only 5 parcels in the entire city that are not beyond the maximum allowable code. So those are still, though, in excess of 18 DU per acre. So those 5 sites are the ones that we did include in the last round. And
we need commercial, though.
We're going to work with you. We're going to work with you. But I want you to understand the challenge that the city has. So we're finding a way. Yep.
Hi, I'm Jack. I'm a 35-year resident of Malaga Cove. Okay, so I'm trying to understand. We have CC&Rs and all these deed restrictions, which specifically include parkland. And do these newly adjudicated housing element, whatever the state law is, does this supersede our CC&Rs that we've lived with for 100 years?
Supreme Court.
Somebody said that must be me. The direct answer to your question is no. Hold on, no. There are specific laws that I'm aware of that target CC&R specifically. One is all affordable housing. The other is ADUs that you're already familiar with. So they're picking them off one at a time. Somebody screamed, I think a lawyer in the audience screamed, it's a constitutional argument that hasn't been litigated. I think that's probably true. We are doing everything we possibly can, as Gina can tell you she experienced with us. to not select sites that violate CCNRs. So it's typical for a consultant to come into a city and say, oh, well, the state would be happy if, and I fell over and had a heart attack when she showed me the slides, because the first one was a picture of Malaga Cove School. How would you feel about that? The second one was George Allen Field. The third one was, right, so none of that, what you just heard in the entire room was my reaction. And so none of that was selected, so that starts to reduce the site selection, right? So anyway, your question was, are our CCNRs directly violated by the state laws? The two that I'm familiar with are 100% affordable housing, if the developer would even do that, and accessory dwelling units. That doesn't mean they won't keep going, but those are the ones I'm familiar with at the moment.
Thank you. Back here?
Lou Latimer, Lanada Bay. Two questions. Number one, are we just talking about 99 total units or 99 units a year?
It's 199 units over the next 8 years.
So over 8 years, we have to absorb 199 units.
You have to plan for it.
Okay. Can I just say, I don't think this community is opposed to affordable housing. We're not opposed to it. We're opposed to changing the complexion of our community. That's number one. Number two, we have multifamily units. Wouldn't a simple solution be to subsidize existing landlords or condominium owners to just take existing units and subsidize what we have and not change the complexion? For 199 units, we have that. We could, as a community, could absorb that extremely easily without a substantial tax size.
And the answer to that is the state wants additional units on top. So if you were to, they already count the units that are existing. Those are from previous housing cycles. This is new. They want, there's something called affirmatively furthering fair housing. They want all segments of the community, all income categories to be able to live in any community. That's the new state mandate.
Back here?
Yes, hello. I'd like to back up to a little bigger picture question which will affect all of Palos Verdes estates regardless of where these are located. And I just have 3 simple questions that are all related. First, does the state of California decide who gets to live in these places? Second, is there published criteria that they use to decide who gets to live here? And if not, do you know what the criteria is? And third, do we have any idea, is this senior? Do we have any idea, is this senior housing? Is it young people? Do we have any idea about the age? Is there anything related to age in that? So
the housing element has to, yes, there is an analysis of the city's current demographics. So age, gender, goes into your educational background, the housing stock, but that is because the state does want, like I said, to provide the ability for any type of person, not specific, Cheryl's gonna live here, but somebody that meets her demographic profile. And this whole diverse panel here, any one of us would be able to go in and live in any community in the city, and in any city. So they're trying to create these regulations that force the city to provide a multitude of housing types that would accommodate anybody, if that helps answer your question. So in a sense.
So are you saying that the state of California makes the decision? Not exactly. Let me try it. I'm going to try and give a little bit of a primer here. So if you read the draft housing element, you will see it refer to various income categories. Sorry, I here, so I don't know. Okay. You will see it refer to various income categories. The zoning that would be put in place, and Gina, please raise your hand if I'm wrong, the zoning doesn't say anything about the income level. So let's say one of the sites in Lunada Bay is 15 units. Okay, all that means is that the owner of that site, if they chose to, could redevelop that site and could build on top of the existing retail, or on top of retail that would be built, 15 units, which would be market rate units because they'd have no incentive to make them low income. The low income piece only comes when they want to see density bonuses. So there are density bonuses that they can get where that increase. So if it's zoned for 15, and this is true of any multifamily site in the city, it's not peculiar to this exercise, but right now, any multifamily site in the city, if someone wanted to redevelop it, they could get more density by saying committing to 20% low income. And then it's on a sliding scale. So the more low income that a developer commits to, the more higher a density bonus they can get, up to about double what the zoning is. Then, you kind of wonder, well, what is the financial incentive for someone to build 100% low-income housing? Because there wouldn't seem to be any. And the answer is that there are tax credits that are available to developers, which they can actually trade up to the bank, and the bank can then, it's a shell game with tax credits that allows them to build it and make money. Now, those tax credits, probably the same in PVE as they would be in any other city, and so for developers typically are going to pick less expensive lots for that purpose. Gina's nodding, so that's good. They're done generally because it's easier to make their projects pencil out if they're paying less for the land. So if you want my opinion of sort of where the risk is, and everyone will have a different opinion about what the risk is, the risk really is in rapid redevelopment with market rate. And we need to make sure that we put in objective criteria that ensure that anything that gets developed looks like it fits in our city. So.
Over here.
I have lots of questions, so I'll try to keep it. Who does the consulting firm work for? Who brought you in?
The city.
The city. So we've hired them to represent us as a city while we go through this process?
I think it'd be more accurate to say we have hired them to do the technical work to represent to the state what our policy objectives.
So what is it going to take if we want 0? And I read your proposal on the plan, and it did not say fair market housing. It said, and it in 4 sentences, it broke down low income, seniors with disabilities, homeless was on there. It was all low income. It was not fair market housing. I read it.
Yeah,
did I read it wrong?
No, you did not read it wrong.
Okay, but you were just talking about fair marketing housing.
No, I was talking market rate housing.
Market housing, that's not low.
No, the point is that the zoning that would happen is actually, does not specify, even though the housing element is an expression of the city's plan, which is different from the actual zoning, which is what a developer actually has a right to build. So they have a right to build, say, 15 units, and they don't have an obligation to build low income. There are other programs that are in place, both on a federal and state level, that incentivize developers to build low income housing, but no one is required to, even if we rezone it in the manner that's in the current draft.
Okay, so I want 0 low income housing, 0. So what is it going to take to get 0 low income housing?
Very directly, I will tell you it would take a substantial change in the makeup of the California legislature. Yes! I want to answer that question very directly. The reason that we are on board is because the alternative is that, and this city has already been put on notice 3 times on its housing. If we do not find a way that satisfies the state requirements, we can be sued. A judge can take control over our entire planning process, and the judge will not hold town hall meetings and take your questions. He will just make decisions, and you will live with it.
So I want to unpack a little on the different zoning sites. I spent some serious quality time in the property records a few nights ago, which you can imagine was fun. But I did notice that it actually was fun. I did notice that the old Struble house. This is the house that was sold to the von Furstenberg people. It's the house that overlooks the Rat Beach. It's the one that did not fall away. It's 1.5 acres. Has since been sold in what looks like a 1031 transaction to a charitable organization called Social Vocational Services, which helps adult disabled people learn to get skills to get jobs. It's 1.5 acres. It's not the church. It seems like a really good place to house potentially 80 people in studio style, tight units, and it's self-contained and it's not really a dangerous population. So presenting maybe an alternative there. That's question one. Have you guys thought about that? Has that come up? Question two is, and by the way, Matt Hoskin, if you don't know me, you've seen me running. Question two is there anything in the state law that would prevent the citizens forming a holding company and starting to buy all of these properties with bylaws that would prevent development? And I'm forgetting question three, but there was a third question.
I think the answer to number one is we'll consider anything that we can make legally work 100% yes.
I would suggest just approach them and try to partner with them and get that going.
Wide open. Number two. Sorry.
Number two was, could we form a citizen-owned holding company and start to buy up properties, and the holding company would control the properties that are zoned, and therefore nothing would ever get done?
Legal question, but good opportunity to say this. Last night in our council meeting, I actually suggested to our council, after interviewing a couple of land use lawyers, that in concert with our consultant, and this goes to the, who's the consultant and who's working with you. In addition to a well-educated, well-informed consultant, before this thing gets submitted, understanding that we're all neighbors and we all have similar goals, trying to keep control of this, that we hire separate and specific land use counsel on behalf of the city to review this so that we can ensure that we've done everything absolutely possible to protect your rights.
Hi, I have one simple question. It's kind of piggyback off the Lenata Bay gentleman who read the list of questions. Looking at the needs of the low-income people, have you guys looked at that into your analysis? Because again, when you look at Lenata Bay, the furthest point, they're going to need transit, things like that. We don't have the transit, we don't have anything. So I'm wondering, how did that come into your analysis?
Yeah, no, I think that is actually an excellent point. It's why we started with St. Francis Church, because I think in a lot of ways it ticks all the right boxes. I think for most people, who, it's on the edge of the city. It is walking distance to a lot of jobs. It's walking distance to a lot of different transit routes. And there was, we had similar kind of reaction from folks who were parishioners at the church, which is how it ended up coming off. I think it probably needs to be considered again, because I'm speaking for myself. And I'm sure there are a lot of people from Lenata Bay here, because I want to let you know, I live in Lenata Bay. 4 of your 5 city council members live in Lenata Bay. The only one that doesn't is Michael.
And I'm the one that got blamed for coming up with the church, so figure that out.
Where's all the city council members? Where are they?
So the answer is that we asked for this because we were working on the draft with Gina as an ad hoc. Now I'm going to explain to you. So there's a state law. The state law does not allow more than 2 council members to work outside of a public meeting. For this meeting, because we requested it, it was just us. If we had
Suggestion.
related suggestion that probably will satisfy your answer. I hear you. I hear you. Hold on. Here's a suggestion. So, we're going to take your feedback. We're going to bring it back to the council in a full public meeting. City manager, please forgive me. Would you be open to that public meeting being held here with the full council?
Yes.
We will take the suggestions and the feedback tonight. We'll assemble it. We'll work with Gina. We'll work with council, meaning legal counsel, and then assemble that, bring it to the city council for review, and we will involve you. Hopefully we'll hold that here.
Where is our assemblyman and state legislature?
I just want to, sorry sir, I just wanted to go back. The reason that we did it this way tonight is because we wanted to do it quickly. That's really the reasons.
Hi, Robin Peacock from Lenata Bay. I just have two questions. How many years are we into the 8-year cycle to find a spot for 199 units? And what happens in the next cycle, and when does that next cycle start? Thanks.
So this cycle started in 2021, so we're 2 years in. And your second question about what happens next, that's the crystal ball that I don't have. I cannot see that the state could possibly ask for more units after what they've asked. For the Southern California region alone, there aren't enough trees in the United States to build them all. So, to put it into perspective. So I don't have a question. I don't think anyone has an answer to question number 2.
Okay, I have a couple things to point out. One, has anybody done any research in any other community where they allow only 2-level buildings? Has anybody done any research on that? Now maybe there's a reason in PV. How many have cracks in your patio and in your walls? That's called earth movement. Can you imagine where they all of a sudden decide to put up something 4 stories high inexpensively? And you're responsible because they're in your city. And also, if they decide to build something 3, 4, 5 feet high, I want to be in it because it's the only way you're going to get that kind of panorama view if you live in Palos Verdes. So give your kids your donations, and you can be up there in the top level and look over the whole Bay Area and everything, because you'll have that view. Because every site they have chosen will have a better view than you do. But check and see if there's other cities that are already zoned for only 2-level. Because you can't have these tenement buildings, they are tenement buildings, unless you go 3, 4, 5 stories high. Keep that in mind.
Ma'am, we are not proposing anything more than 3 stories. With 3 stories within 35 feet. 35 feet is already the maximum allowed by code. We would not exceed that.
I'm not a member or a resident of PVE. I was a city council member in Rolling Hills Estates for many, many years, and we've been through this, and you're not alone. And I'd like to first say that everything I'm hearing from your elected people is correct. And most correct is Mr. Kemp's advice, don't get sued. The other correct statement is your land values will keep you safe for a period of time because it's not cost effective to build multifamily, let alone multifamily even with density, with income compromised people. So you're going to have to do something. Don't let it become divisive, because it's not a question of getting divided and getting defeated. It's a question of uniting and fighting. And if you look, there is no legislative remedy given the makeup of the state legislature. The only remedy is going to be an initiative. And if you look at your handout, you look at our neighborhood voices. That is the only way out of this, which is a statewide initiative. I think there are nearly 50 cities now involved in this, elected officials. That's the only real daylight involved. Please, please contribute to our neighborhood voices, pass an initiative, and get what you want, because that's the only way it's going to happen.
Hi, my name is Dan Cote, 47-year resident of Lower Lenata Bay. Like many, I want zero, right? I mean, and your jobs is to fight for us, right? We elected you, and that would be the first option. With regards to the existing element plan, it's not right. I know you have a very difficult decision, and any decision is going to be unpopular, but you need to make the right decision. As it stands today, Lenata Bay has way too high of a density for a number of reasons that have already been pointed out. I want to add a few. It's the center of our community. I live there. I see a ton of congestion already. There's already a ton of traffic. Our great local high school is right there in the heart of Lenata Bay. And if you're a parent and you're familiar with driving on Palos Verdes Drive West, exiting the city, it's already a nightmare. And I can't imagine adding that number of units in the center. If you're going to be adding units, you need to do it at the ingress and egress points of the city. Namely, the most logical is the St. Francis Church. It's right there off Palos Verdes Boulevard, and there's no homes around. Make the right decision and rezone that church. Don't be afraid of litigation from that church.
Sorry, that gentleman's waiting. Oh.
Thank you. My name is Richard Briggs, and I'm speaking on behalf of St. Francis Church. I don't mean to be divisive, and I appreciate your comment at the outset where you said substantial changes would be made, and certainly three sites in Lenata Bay is too much. But you removed St. Francis Church because it's protected by a private covenant, which designates St. Francis Church for religious use only. And second, we're protected by a federal statute. And those are the reasons we retained a land use attorney, brought these to your attention. You took the church off the list, and we appreciate it, and there's no reason for you to put it back on. Thank you.
Just over here. Thanks for your patience.
I just had a quick question. Which court is hearing the pending cases? Is it at the state level, federal level? And if we lose at this level, can it be appealed to a higher, to potentially federal level?
My understanding is state level and yes, appealable.
I am going to have the easiest question for today's evening. We're trying not to be divisive, more inclusive. So has the legislation at the state level placed any obligation on our city to be more inclusive in terms of the ever-evolving genders, 72 or more in these housings? We have more than 72 genders. Just FYI.
Not to the best of our knowledge, no.
How many genders? No. 72. I don't know.
Hi, good evening. My name is Keith Jones. I've lived in this community, wonderful community, for about 5 years. I just went through this in Culver City, where I lived for 26 years. I can tell you that I agree with the young lady in the back. You can't roll over for this. You know, this SB 9, SB 10 was passed in 2021. no offense to you guys, but where have you been on this? We're hearing about this now. You knew about this in 21.
Actually, sir, hold on. This is important. So I'm not going to go too far with this because this is being recorded, but I'm going to answer your question. The Palos Verdes Homes Association does not approve SB 9 lot splits. We have none, we are accepting none, and we will not authorize any.
But this is all, SB 10 and SB 9 are all part of this whole housing element that you're being faced with now.
I understand.
It's been going on since 2021. Number one question. The only other question I can tell you is that in dealing with this in Culver City, look, the only thing that I can see the way out of this is not to allow any and to do a ballot measure. California, you can do it. It's been happened with all sorts of crazy laws get passed by these ballot measures with the referendum. We can do it because there's so many other cities. Last thing is charter cities are banding together and they are fighting this and there are lawsuits going on right now. So I think a litigation part might be costly, but what is the cost to having this happen to our community? It's significant. So I would suggest putting together a fund for a lawsuit so the city doesn't have to burden this. I think there's enough people in this room that would gladly commit to that. But also I would say commit money to a a ballot measure, because that's the only way. There's every city up and down California is dealing with this. This is horrific. And it has nothing to do with equity. Nothing to do with equity. It has everything to do with donors, large donors going and supporting these candidates in Sacramento. Real estate developers, affordable housing developers, they're the ones that have been pushing this. This has nothing to do with equity.
Who wants to go to the wires, or who wants to cave in and go into the gas chambers?
No comment. Next question.
I'm just curious, and I think someone else brought it up, how does this affect the traffic circle? I'm just trying to bring some light into the room. Because we can't figure it out. Our dear future neighbors would probably have a difficult time. And it's just too skinny of a street going by the cliffs. There's limited. So you do think about egress and ingress and safety and fire safety and the cliffs and the landslides and just all kinds of things. So I'm just curious how we're moving toward the egress and ingress on all four points or 3 points of the city.
Yeah, Gina, maybe you could address this. So it's about impacts of traffic. We've also heard people asking about, hey, we're a very high fire risk zone. Can you talk about how those,
And as I pass the mic, just for clarity, the entire Palos Verdes Peninsula is a very high fire zone.
Yep.
So there is a concurrent safety element update being drafted for the city. In fact, next week, it's been in draft form, it's been out, released to the public. That addresses the concerns for all safety concerns.
How does it impact housing?
So the easiest way to answer that is the maximum density proposed by the document is in line with what's already approved. The current zoning allows for 24.9 dwelling units per acre. When it was originally drafted years ago, those concerns were evaluated. So traffic, ingress and egress, anything to do with the health and safety of the community was already addressed at the time the original development standards and allowable uses were written. So this draft is in line. But there will still be, once if there's a rezone, that would have to be evaluated again with any California Environmental Quality Act document, so a CEQA document. It would have to be evaluated again to reassure the community that steps are being taken to prevent any, or to mitigate any impacts.
Hi, I'm Amy Drake. I'm from Lanada Bay. I have 2 questions. One is, Mayor and Michael, I both heard you say questions that you have with the current draft, but I think the draft kind of comes from the council, so I'm trying to understand who came up with this draft and how the revisions are going to be made. And second, well, I guess I have 3 questions. Second, I know we have a GC on the council, but besides that, do we have a high-powered, serious attorney on this group? And my third question is, we have this ad hoc group that's overlooking this with the consultant, but what about adding some of the brilliant people in this room? I would volunteer these 2 guys in the nice shirts to be on this ad hoc committee rather than have a town hall meeting where we're all screaming out questions and hoping that we remember them. I think there's several people in here that would volunteer to be on this committee that would represent Lenata Bay and Malaga Cove and not bring it down to a town hall meeting where it's last minute and we're trying to come up with our questions.
All right, let's take it one at a time. The first one is, didn't you guys create the draft? Yes, the consulting firm, 2 consulting firms have helped us with these drafts. We had an initial firm that created a draft. My take is that we agreed with you too much, and I'll leave it there. So now we have a second firm helping us, A, respond to the questions that we got on the first draft, and B, supporting us through this effort. I think the second question was relative to legal counsel. We do have a GC. That firm also has land use inside of that firm, and I'm just going to, can I say it? Yeah. I'm going to credit Blake Gilman. We've been collaborating with him. He has referred legal counsel, and Jim and I have been in a meeting, or maybe multiple meetings, with him, and we either have or are pending a letter and an engagement with a law firm who I will not yet mention that is being referred to in the council with our likely recommendation. I alluded to it last night. Sorry, what was the third one?
The third question was, as this ad hoc committee.
Inviting other people in.
These 2 guys in.
Very open. As I mentioned, we've already been collaborating with Blake. I am personally open to collaborating with anyone. That has been a great engagement, and truly, I wasn't involved in the beginning of this, so let me just say, while I have the mic, I'm grateful for you spending your time with us. I hear you 100,000%, and we will do everything we possibly can to be helpful in the situation that we are squeezed with, and I cannot echo our neighborhood voices shout loudly enough.
Hi. I just have the very basic question is, how did that number come up with for our very crowded and what I'm hearing is overwhelmed city? How did that number come up?
The RENA number, the 199?
So that was developed by the SCAG, the Southern Council of Governments. And they spent a lot of time, and even just as background, the numbers were challenged from the get-go, and we're reduced, in fact, for all cities, but SCAG created those numbers.
I just have a quick question. Could you tell us why Malaga Cove School was passed up?
So number one, we are being very careful not to select. You heard questions about CC&Rs and deed restrictions from a couple in the audience already. We're being very careful to do our best to not select specific deed restricted sites, including schools, parkland, etc., that have been in place under the Palos Verdes Homes Association from the 20s, since prior to the incorporation of the city. So that's our intent, and then B, I've been told that HCD does not want to accept deed restricted sites because they know that there are limitations to development on those deed restricted sites.
Don't we all fall in that deed restriction though, the CCNRs, every single community?
Well, but specifically the school sites, as I understand it, were gifted to the school district with very specific limitations on those sites, and there is history and litigation around those sites.
But the sites aren't used currently, so if it's school sites that aren't used, I can give it back.
No, they can't.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to add one thing, which is that the we have gotten very specific feedback from the state about deed restricted sites, as Michael mentioned, but
They proposed that site.
I think Gina proposed it to us, and we told her very quickly that it's deed restricted. We've gotten specific feedback from them, which kind of ironically, sort of absurdly, told us that we needed to do something about our deed restrictions. To which Michael and I said, the city does not have deed restrictions. The deed restrictions are private contracts that each of us as members of the Palos Verdes Homes Association has with each other. They are not the city's to deal with. I'm not even sure what they would have expected the city to do in that case, but at the very least, they did not want us to select sites that had a deed restricted that would preclude them from being developed as multifamily.
Why did they choose that site in the first place?
Because Gina didn't know. It was Gina. Gina didn't know about the deed restrictions. She doesn't live here,
Hi, my name is Suzanne Homer. I have a statement and then a question. I'm frankly dismayed that this has been going on since 2021 and we haven't had an experienced land use lawyer on our side helping us select sites. I'm not exactly sure why we're all hearing about this now, so that's my comment. My question is, now that we're actually getting a land use lawyer involved, do we have time to submit a new proposal? My understanding is we're already late with our proposal and there are consequences like the builder's remedy. So do we have time to actually submit something that this town can agree upon?
Gina, you want to talk about the time?
Sure. So as far as timing, we're under the gun. We can do our best, and we do plan to coordinate with the state and let them know that we need more time. And as far as timing for this whole 2-year process, this has been going on. Unfortunately, there was a bad pandemic when this started with the previous county. No, wait. So the previous housing consultant he conducted Zoom meetings that tried to get people involved. He didn't. Okay. That is all I have to say about that.
Okay, I'll talk. Hey everybody, this is Blake Gilman. A lot of you may know me. I'll stand up. It's great hearing from a lot of you. I heard Lou Latimer taught me how to surf when I was about 8 years old. Gave me a surfboard. Leatherberry here. I see a lot of folks that I've known through the years, and it's great to see the whole community involved like this around this issue. So I just want to point out a couple things. One is I reviewed the site selection in the draft housing element, and the Lanada Bay sites, the analysis is that the present use will likely discontinue in the planning period. And I'm curious how we reached that conclusion, because I went to all the different tenants in Lanada Bay Plaza, and most of them have long-term leases. The Palos Verdes Mexican restaurant has a 15-year lease. How can we claim that they're viable for redevelopment if they have a 15-year lease? Raffaello's has a brand new 6-year lease. Black Bamboo and Annie's, they have a couple years left with a 5-year option to extend. So all these tenants, they've got rights, and we have to buy them out in order to designate these sites. And I can't see that as in any way realistic or feasible. I don't know how we're going to list those sites. And the other thing too is I think we got to look at the ownership of these different sites. There are a few sites that are owned by the same family. The Karras family, for example, owns Site 2, which includes the 2 office buildings, and I cannot see them developing affordable housing. Talk to the owner, I just can't see that happening. Lastly, I will say, I agree with our elected officials in that we need to be strategic about this. We can get our housing element passed, and we can fight the state. Those 2 goals are not mutually exclusive, and we need to focus on that, because that's our path to victory. And so I'm going to throw this out. It's a crazy idea, and you can all tell me it's horrible. You love it. That's good. All right, so we heard about the school sites. Malaga Cove, beautiful land, a lot of land, historic site. What if we, it's owned by the school district, we have a lot of our students in PVPUSD who are disabled. And when they turn 22 years old, they age out of the system and they go to homes and they get subsidized by the state to go to these homes. What if we converted, at least thought about converting some of the land in Malaga Cove to accommodate housing for these individuals whose parents live in the community, right? We could meet a lot of those numbers just by doing that, and it would not require rezoning the land. It would only require a CUP, which I'm sure if we got enough people to support it, that would be possible. Now, of course, would it violate the deed restrictions and the CCNRs? Perhaps. Would the California Supreme Court likely side that we're in a housing crisis and that public policy reason is sufficient rationale to override our local CCNRs? The California Supreme Court would likely say yes. Now, would the U.S. Supreme Court say yes? No. You see where I'm going with this? Okay, so we got to think strategically and look at this as, you know, we may lose the battle, but we're going to win the war. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Granada Bay. I see lots of different things. There's a lot of really smart people in this room, but the majority I have never seen at a city council meeting. I've never seen them on Zoom. I have never seen them trying to work with the council. And these are the people we elected. They are not paid for their jobs. They're trying to help us. And I think that we as a community need to get together and work with them. I hope that they will respond on how we can contact them. I have found it very easy to send an email to any of them, and I always get an answer back. I don't always agree with what I hear, but I get an answer back and I understand where they're coming from. And I think if we did this, we'd be better off as a community. As for the plan that we're talking about and the building, the units in Granada Bay that are being proposed, I think are totally wrong. It is between three schools, Granada Bay Elementary, the intermediate school, and the high school. And the parents in that area know the lines that exist now to get into those schools. If there's more housing there, it's going to be nearly impossible. And ever since I've watched council meetings, I've heard that we have to raise taxes if we don't have any community development, restaurants, banks, hardware stores, gas stations, and now we're proposing to eliminate those. And I think that that is just the wrong thing to do. Thank you.
Just a couple of comments. I live in Granada Bay, have done for 20-some years. And a long time ago, I thought about maybe I could get out of California, sell my house, make a little money, and not have to work with all this stuff. And I came to the conclusion that I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stay and fight. And one of the things we got to fight for is to take care of the city we live in. And I'm for doing whatever it takes to take care of this city. The charter and the Homes Association has made all of us that have a home here pay a lot to do the things we had to do to our home. And that's okay. What I don't want to do is see it all go away and taken over by the state.
Hi, my name is Lori Wickstead. I was a 30-year resident of Long Bay. It's the best place in the world, of course. I love it. I live in Malaga Cove. That's not bad. But Granada Bay is paradise. Anyway, point is, I'm in commercial real estate. This is a very serious thing, and they are trying to help. You don't want the builder's remedy to kick in. You need a plan. 133 units is nothing compared to, I don't want to see them either, but I'm just saying, compared to what other communities are dealing with. I'm on my sorority corporate board at USC, and you can't believe what's going on the road. I'm sure there are people in the room that went to USC, and we're in a fraternity or sorority. And we're fighting, we're suing the developer, we're suing the city of Los Angeles, and we're probably going to lose. It bought us some time, but because we made an issue of the 6-story, we're talking a 10,000 square foot lot between Theta and Alpha Phi, and no parking, okay, TOCs, which means you're within so many feet of a bus station, and so they think like, okay, you don't have to do this, you don't have to do that. Because we're fighting him on that, he's now saying, fine, withdraw my application, now I'm going to build 100% affordable housing. 8-story, well, it's not even builders remedy, it's this new affordable housing, and the state giving you tax credits, city, state, everybody giving you tax credits, funding. Even though construction costs are very high right now, you say, how can you build 133 micro units and make this worth it? Call it all affordable. So to answer a question that wasn't answered, what does that mean? That means you take the median income of whatever the radius is, and you take a third of that. So if the medium, I'm trying to say these are not terrible people, these are not homeless people, shouldn't totally worry. In the middle of LA by USC, they're coming up with a number of $30,000 becomes what someone has to make, so now, or 35. So now that one person, one bedroom can go for $1,800. You still have to pay that. They're not necessarily taking vouchers. Now, how do you get on the list? Can students go there? No. Until they change the law again, you have to be on the list for HUD. And it's sort of a lottery. Yes, the developer has some say-so in who they pick and whatnot. I do a lot of property sales and sales to developers for high-density developers in the San Pedro area. It breaks my heart to see what we're doing there, but we have a lot of market rate. So you have 100% affordable, right? Then you have what's called market rate density, and you either go low income or very low income. If you agree to do very low income, you have to, you get 10% of your project goes to these people that aren't paying market rate, or if you do just regular low income. Now what is low income? That's $70,000. Those are not bad people. There are single moms who live in Granada Bay right now in an apartment making less than that. So what I'm saying is don't be too scared, okay? Not for it. I certainly don't want to see this go to Granada Bay. Definitely need our retail and our office and all of those that make it what it is. But to echo what a couple other people said, the best thing you can do to fight this, call your senators, write your state senators, and I'm sure there are people in this room that know Gavin Newsom, and you need to call him and you need to talk to him, and we need to get it on the ballot. AB 35 just got extended, and that's one of the things that allows this. Okay, thank you.
Hey, thank you everyone for your patience.
Hi, my name is Joan Davidson. I've lived here a very long time. I know a lot of people in this room. I've been involved in trying to stop this train wreck for 3 years. I belong to the California Cities for Local Control, and I'm very active in our neighborhood voices. And the reason I'm so active is it's the only solution out of this mess. This statewide initiative will allow PV estates to opt out of all these laws. So go look it up. They're having a meeting right now, a statewide meeting, the same time we are. They need money. They need your endorsement. They need your support. Because Bill Brand is the mayor of Redondo Beach. He wrote the initiative. He grew up in Palos Verdes estate. Some people know him who's sitting here. And so I am just saying, get on board, help us pass the 2024 ballot initiative, because if we don't, we're all stuck. I understand totally everyone's frustration, but I've been very involved in this. I've been living it for a long time. And you need to understand we're a general law city. The California Constitution gives special rights to charter cities. So Redondo Beach and Torrance sued because they were charter cities because they have special rights in the Constitution to zone their own land. We don't. Once wonderful Gavin Newsom decided to rip away our zoning, he said, too bad, you general law cities will go along with whatever I say. The charter cities sued because they do have rights that are written into the Constitution. We don't. Thank you.
Hey guys. First of all, thank you. Like, this is a very difficult problem, it sounds like. I'm a rather simple fellow. I like to think about things simply. Do we have to build 199 homes?
No.
No. Do we have to make it low-income housing or affordable housing, or what's that distinction? And then, sorry, real quick. It sounds like there has to be economic incentives for somebody to actually do this, right? For it to actually pan out, right? So if we don't do anything, if we don't come up with a consensus, we will be told what to do. Is that a fair summary? Yes. Okay. So instead of fighting with you, how can we work with you? What would it take to come up with something that we can pass that is good for all of us? That's all I got. Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jim. Go.
So the answer to your first question is no. Nothing about the housing element mandates any construction. Nothing about it mandates construction of any income-limited housing either. How can you help? Coming here tonight is the first step.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I want to thank, not everyone's going to get a chance to speak by the end of the night, but Michael and I, I'm sure, will give our email addresses, and I'll give you my phone number too. I won't speak for Michael, but we are open to hearing any of your feedback. I am certain that our three colleagues, who also will have a voice in this, are open to that too. I suspect that coming out of this meeting, we will probably not operate as an ad hoc anymore. We will do this with the full council. I believe that, and you're going to see, this is the first of many meetings like this that will provide people an opportunity to give us feedback.
I'm Sherry Newell. I've lived in Lenore Bay over 20-some years, and just listening to some of the suggestions, Blake, Red Tie Boy, the runner, brilliant minds. You got to think out of the box to solve a problem. We're all in this together, and if we use our minds, we can do it. There's some really great suggestions, especially from the runner back there. Love it.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jim Allison. I live in Lenore Bay, been there for 23 years. In the housing element, it mentions and talks about shelters, which hasn't come up very often. Can you touch on that and how those would come into creation, if ever? Hopefully not.
Your zoning code has to allow for shelters. You don't have to build them. And your zoning code has already been amended to allow for them.
So, but if a developer came in and redid Lenore Bay, could he incorporate a shelter?
When did that happen?
Yeah, long time ago.
Repeat the question. When
Yeah.
did that happen?
Within the last 4 years, state law required that shelters be included in your zoning code.
So there's not been a zoning text amendment in that regard while I've been on the council, but Michael doesn't remember that either. I don't know the answer to that, but we'll find that out.
2015, the last land development.
The suggestion here, there might have been in the last housing element.
Did you say
cycle.
Did you say 13?
Okay, so that was that would have been 9.5 years ago.
Over here? Or is that a waiting?
If I understand correctly, none of this comes to fruition unless someone buys the property from the private landowners that own it currently. And to what I think was the suggestion of our Red Tide runner, rather than have people buy all of that land, perhaps those people could negotiate a right of first refusal from those people in order to protect that property.
Validating your comments that yes, there is no eminent domain involved in any of this, and the purchases are from private landowners, and whether or not they sell anything is entirely their business.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Ward, and I don't really think it matters
matters what neighborhood I live in. The way you describe the housing element sounds to me like a socialist or communist society. And it sounds like there's a housing element cycle that happens that we've accepted it. So why don't we break the cycle and consider who we're electing into the offices in Sacramento? My second question is, people have alluded to it, but you're saying like these need to be planned for, but you don't go as far as saying they need to be built. So am I hearing you right? There's like a nuance.
Yeah, the nuance.
And I'm not understanding when the building happens, or maybe there can be a state referendum, maybe there can be a new governor, and this won't happen.
The nuance is, there's two ways in which the housing element, Gina, please correct me if I got this wrong, essentially is going to plan for new units. One way is it's just the appearance of a project with, or excuse me, a particular site within the housing element is a form of planning. That does not necessarily give any developer the right to do it. They might have to come to the city and request what's called a conditional use permit, or CUP. However, the state also will require us to rezone some places. And that's what we mean when we say that, so let's say that you own Duke's gas station, okay, and it gets rezoned as multifamily. It's the owner of Duke's gas station that decides whether or not he wants to sell it or redevelop it. The zoning creates the opportunity for him, but does not convey, and it does not, create the mandate.
Did we get them all?
If the city's willing to approve 80 ADUs in the next 8 years, does that affect the number 199?
Yes.
It does, yes, and it's already factored in to a certain extent, and we've been going back and forth with the state on how many ADUs we can count towards that purpose.
Yeah, I live in Luanda Bay, like everybody else. Question, housing is expensive. You got more sewer, more water, more schools, more traffic, more everything. Costs for the city goes up. We get rid of Luanda Bay commercial, sales tax goes down. Costs up, money goes down. What are we going to lose in this city? Are we going to lose our police departments? Are we going to? Where's the give on this thing when everything is done?
I agree with you completely. It's a very serious concern, and I think it's one of the reasons why it's very important that any commercial that got rezoned needs to have a mandate that there be commercial component that remains.
My name is Susan Porter Griego. I've lived in Palos Verdes for 60 years. And I have people in this room that I know from my childhood. I'm proud to see. So there's a few things that people brought up here that nobody's really answered. So I'm going to take a moment to kind of fill you in. To the gentleman from Culver City, you're absolutely right. This is just the beginning. For a long time I've said to people, Palos Verdes is on the track to become another Santa Monica or Venice. And people would laugh at me and say, oh, so that's never going to happen. But you know what? It is. And the other point is this is just the beginning. How do I know that? Because a year and a half ago, I went to Manhattan Beach for a South Bay Association of Realtors meeting where Steve Napolitano was talking, who I know well from when I worked in downtown LA. He's the mayor. I asked him, I said, well, first of all, I said, when he was talking about all this development and whatnot, I raised my hand and said, in July of 2021, Governor Newsom put out a worldwide request to the world's homeless and to the nation's homeless to come to California, that we would take care of them because we could afford it. And you know what happened? They listened and they came. And then lo and behold, we have this housing crisis of California. And my contention is, and I said to him is, we don't have a California housing crisis. We have a world crisis here, and we're funding it. So what are you doing to get together with all the mayors of the cities to push back against Sacramento? And he just stared at me and said, and he went off about something else. And then he, as they do, because politicians like to do that. And so then what he said was, as I said, well, how did this all come about? He said, well, you know, for years, California and Sacramento's had a committee. And they tally up all of the homeless or the people who need housing. And then they would kind of, you know, tell builders they could build X amount of buildings. And he said, and they used to build out in places where there was space, like Riverside, San Bernardino. He said, that's how we got sprawl, suburban sprawl. He said, but now what's happened is this committee's decided, no, we have all these numbers and we're gonna divvy them all up and we're gonna divvy them amongst the cities that are already in existence. And we're gonna give them an allotment. Isn't that right, gentlemen?
100% right.
Yes, that's right. And so what they did was, for instance, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago in Manhattan Beach, those people were assessed, I'm gonna say, maybe generously, approximately 65 dwellings. Somebody in here, tell me, what do you think they were assessed this last go-around?
1,000.
700. 700 in Manhattan Beach, where you put your arm out the window and touch your neighbor's house. Okay? So they're doing with their thing. So that's what's happened here. So to the point of the woman who said this sounds like socialism, yes it is. That's exactly what we got going on. Right. And if you think anybody in here thinks that this is the end of this, you are sorely mistaken. Because this is the very beginning of the destruction of our suburbs. And all of you who've gone to lots of great universities like I did, worked their asses off to be where you are today, are going to have to share your homes and your communities with people who have not, for various reasons. Either by a situation that they were not, when we want to help those who are really indigent, right? I mean, poor, the handicapped and whatnot. But really, people who have not, who just chosen to do nothing, I'm sorry, call me whatever. But I'm sorry, I'm not in that camp. All right, so the other thing is that I was one of the few people who never spoke at a city council meeting in her life, but has spoken to the city council meeting at Peavy Estates twice about that roundabout. Yes. That's right. And the roundabout that was actually approved under the cover of darkness, without any of us knowing about it, and that it was going to happen. And then what happened is a whole bunch of residents, about 200, showed up at city council meeting, and lo and behold, I think one of you up there said, it's dead, not happening, never happening again. But you know what? It's still happening.
No, it is not, ma'am.
Excuse me.
Excuse me.
I'm not
sorry.
done talking. We have two. Excuse me.
Could you grab the microphone, please? No, I'm sorry. No.
I'm going to finish, Mr. Kemp.
I'm going to talk to you directly.
Absolutely
You may
not.
absolutely finish, and please wrap it up.
What we're going to have here-
hold on. The topic of this meeting is housing. We appreciate what you said on the roundabout.
Let me tell you why
You
we
are
want to have
taking
a
over
roundabout.
our meeting, ma'am.
Because Metro is giving us money to put, we have to have enough roads to handle buses, to bring, transportation for the people who need to have low-income housing. All right?
The city council has made a direction together to not approve a roundabout in acceptance and recognition of
If we
what
have
the
a roundabout,
residents
Mr.
want.
Kemps, I will be at your city council meeting, standing right in front of you, just loving every moment of the fact that you have approved it.
I welcome that because it will not be
Thank you.
approved, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good topic to follow. I'm Tamsin Curtis. I'm very happy to be here because I can't be censored like I am on Nextdoor constantly. In fact, a couple days I said this was socialism and got my comment removed. It happens all the time. And I'm going to get the elephant out the room, and I've got 3 words. Stop voting Democrat.
voice. I've been studying the housing element since the last round in 2013, but things escalated when they got 2/3 majority in the state. And 2/3 is probably wrong for any party, and things took a turn very quickly. At this point, Palos Verdes is required to reduce our water by 35% by 2035, and by 30% by 2030. I don't know how we're going to do it with additional people being brought into each and every one of our cities. Our utilities have not been asked whether or not they can handle the capacity. These are questions that need to happen. Additionally, the county has required that we actually put constraints on development for safety concerns. We need to know how long it will take to exit the city in the case of catastrophe. They have specific language in there, legally we have to put in and put on the builders if we are in a fire zone, a flood zone, an earthquake zone, and a fire zone. We are in all four. These are objective constraints that can be written up by the council, and then when a developer comes and said, I have it by right, I get to do this just over the counter, that piece of paper goes right in front of them. It says we have this written criteria. We need to know how soon the council is going to get this in place. It's really important. Thank you very much.
I just have two quick questions. How much money does the city receive from the state on an annual basis? And if the city decides not to receive the money, can you avoid these requirements?
I believe the answer to the second question is no, but I'm not sure that we receive any state money that has handcuffs relative to housing.
Why did the state lost the state money?
Because we could apply for it. But because of the nature of our city historically, we have not. The only one that I'm aware of is I think we applied for some money relative to actually paying for a consultant and being involved in this process. That didn't pay for housing per se. I think we'd probably all be happy to not receive that.
Michael, can you answer the question about the objective criteria?
Absolutely on the list to go back to the full council with. Are you asking me about objective standards?
I'm asking when.
ASAP in our recommendations from this meeting to the full city council to consider. The answer to your question is now.
Hello, it's nice to finally meet you guys. I've seen you on city council meetings. I actually have some ideas.
Can't hear you.
I'm familiar with affordable housing and I work in architecture. I know that there are little bits and pieces in Palos Verdes estates that could be used for tiny homes. And I have a way to, like if you had city funding or state funding to build one tiny house, and then the people that from the community that need affordable housing. I've heard from seniors in this community that were scared because they were getting priced out of the place they were living and they didn't know what to do. So let's save it for the community for affordable housing. People can move into the tiny houses, use that income, goes back to the kitty for more affordable housing, but keep it tiny. Keep it where it fits with the city, where it's not this high density. And then you don't have the issues with traffic, and you don't have the issues with all these other infrastructure. Let's keep it for the people and let them contribute and let it keep going. But I think there's a good solution here, and I think people in this meeting could use this. And also for the Granny Flush, the ADUs, I was reading the latest one, and they're counting a certain number of ADUs for affordable housing. The problem is people are not renting them out for affordable housing. And probably the reason for that is because people are just assuming that they don't want to have some homeless person come in and some druggie or something. So why don't we do ADUs, but maybe set them up for seniors? And it could be a benefit to the families because the person on the lot can kind of watch after the kids, and they can, it could be a safe, good solution. So let's kind of come up with something that would work. Not take the catastrophic approach.
Thank you. So we're losing the crowd. Can we have a show of hands of people that remain that wish to speak 1, 2 that haven't, yeah, 3, 1, 2, 3. We've got about 5, it looks like, Elaine.
Hi, I'm consolidating for a couple people who couldn't be here tonight, so there's a few disjointed thoughts. But firstly, the housing element is terrible, but the other density laws are far worse. So these forced density laws will destroy everything we love about our city. And after we fairly distribute the density zoning in the city, the real work needs to begin. The state has unleashed a flood of new density laws, as we've heard, to give developers and investors control over the California coastline. But there are opportunities in these laws that exist. PBE residents have not been informed by city leaders, thank you for tonight, and are left unaware oftentimes. And worse, they feel that our leaders have no strategy and have not taken action to protect our city. Our city needs to implement objective criteria for safety on development projects approved over the counter ASAP, and that is just the beginning. And finally, we need a strategy on how we will protect our city. I think the young lady over here just mentioned, as best we can. This begins with open meetings and collaboration with residents, as we're doing tonight. And the roundabout was mentioned. Residents expect transparency and a voice in the development of our city, and we need leadership and a strategy to preserve our city. And my personal comment is, with more people leaving California than coming, why do we need this at all?
Last question was the best. In my notes, improved communication, there are very active efforts going on with that. City managers all over that. Yes, really. I don't know who said that, but yes, truly. You'll see the results soon. Why are we not taking action to protect? We are taking action to protect. By eliminating and minimizing CC&R violations in sites that most other cities would be able to select and not protect and throw automatically into this housing element, we're bending over backwards to try and control it. The challenge is that then leaves us with sites like Granada Bay's Commercial Center, right? So we will make every possible effort to, with our council, fairly resolve this problem, and then at the same time continue to work to protect you without being sued by the state.
I have a couple questions. So what if the building that was selected for this was the building where Palos Verdes is in, and it was sent central government and everything, and they don't want to sell it? Then what happens? And the second question is, what is Rolling Hills doing about this?
Well,
we have an expert on that.
We have an expert on what Rolling Hills is doing, because our city manager, Elaine Jang, who we just hired from Rolling Hills, successfully got their housing element through. And they were able to rezone the continuation high school that happens to be in Rolling Hills on the outside of the gates. It is not deed restricted like our sites, but that was an uphill battle too, and she did an admirable job of negotiating with the state on that. And then, Gina, do you want to address the first question? It was about what happens if someone don't want to sell.
If they don't want to sell, then nothing happens.
Why don't we just talk to the people who want to sell stuff, don't sell them, and then pick that building, we're done.
I think.
I think the question was, why don't we talk to the people and then we're done? I think, you know, we can't as city leaders affect people's motivations as to whether or not they do or don't want to sell private property, right? You as residents, you're about to volunteer, so I'm teeing you up. You as residents have the ability to do that. And there are some Granada Bay residents already doing that and have been engaged in that as we speak specifically. I won't mention them by name, but he was sitting in the second row.
I just have a quick question. Is becoming a charter city, is that something we'd want to consider?
I think anything's on the table. I'm trying to look at who actually asked the question. I think anything's on the table. RPV looked at this and couldn't get it passed because of our CC&Rs previously being confidently in place to defend and protect us. I think prior city councils didn't look as closely at that. But that may be something we wish to look at. People have made reference to lawsuits. There are 2 lawsuits currently, both from charter and general law cities. I speaking only for myself and not the rest of the council, would absolutely be open to that analysis and would consider it if it made sense and everyone wanted to do it.
Hi guys, Scott Rosenberg here. I happen to be a housing developer and a local resident, and I can say to you that I am a personal advocate of zero affordable housing in Palos Verdes. And I've studied the housing elements, and I want to share a couple of things that I think it is important to kind of try to highlight, and I'm going to try and cast a conciliatory tone here, because the housing element, in the absence of the housing element, the city faces pretty grave consequences, and a nefarious developer could have more control by not having our local controls mandating that the roof looks nice and the windows are a certain size and the minimum size of the development of each particular unit and the total number of units and the height restriction. And there's a lot in the housing element, and I've only read parts of it, but there's a lot that constrain the hell out of the actual efficacy of the project. That is very important to recognize that was intentional. It's also important to realize that we have to sell the housing element to the state. So if you read it, it reads like a pro-development handbook. And if you're reading it, you're going to say, why is the city sending the state a pro-development handbook? Because we have to sell it. It doesn't mean that we want it. And I don't think that the city council has the right to stand up and pound their fist in a public forum and say, we got your back. We are sticking it to the developer, because if it's on public record and it gets to the housing officials that are approving it, there's got to be some connectivity in the intent. But I'm not on city council, and I can tell you that, for example, I did an analysis myself, because as a developer I go, who's the most likely candidate? The city council, thanks in part to the voices of all of us and the city council, they got rid of the church. I'm a commercial real estate broker. We're cold calling churches. Churches are falling left and right because they just don't have the constituency and the money and so on and so forth. So we did the right thing. That's off the table. By having a housing element that is actually passed, we keep the church safe. And we make gyms, the highest probability redevelopment site is gyms. And let me tell you something, you can only build 10 units on Jim's site. At a cost of, on a good day, that place will sell for, on a bad day, good day, bad day, depending on who you are, sell for $2 million. That's going to work out to $200,000 per developable unit, and there is no way to make that deal pencil. No way to make that deal pencil. So I think it's really important to understand that there's a lot of gray area and there's a lot of unspoken reality here, that we need a housing element to the best of my knowledge. And again, if fighting it and just being obstinate to the state is the right thing to do, then I'm for it. So that we're clear. I'm for that option if that's the most economically feasible way of getting our way. But I don't think it is, but I don't know for sure. But if it's not, then we need to pass a housing element that makes it, that the state says yes to, but that creates a scenario where and I'm telling you guys, right now in LA, and you're gonna get paid the same amount as a developer. I can't sell a development site for $30,000 per developable unit, and we're freaked out about gyms going out at $200,000 or $250,000 per developable unit. Jim's is a gas station in Lenata Bay. That's the most underutilized piece of commercial real estate in our total community. No, you do, but okay, let me back up a little bit. So, from the standpoint of revenue within the space, okay, gas stations, from a developer standpoint, are one of the places that developers target, because from a utilization standpoint, gas stations typically are on corner locations and they have a higher potential use for their location compared to their revenue and their income potential today, okay? So gas stations are a prime target for development, which is why it's been cited a couple of times. Malaga Cove used to have a gas station, doesn't anymore. There's a reason. Those sites, economically speaking. So Jim's is a really good example of looking at the probability of knocking down where Salsa Verde is just kind of insane. It's fully utilized. Jim's is the gas station. Oh, Duke's. Sorry, I apologize. I live in Malaga Cove. All right, I gotta wrap it up. But at any rate, my point is, you guys, is that I think it's important to pay attention to the nuance, because nuance is really what the issue is here. And I'm not saying I'm in favor of the element. I'm not saying I'm opposed to the element. I'm not 100% sure, but I do think that it's very incumbent upon us to be very cognizant of what our goal is. And our goal is to not get the housing here at all, and that may be interwoven in how we craft a policy that gets approved. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a speaker on the side. Okay, and then Deborah, I got you, and you next. Okay.
Thank you. My name is Aileen Taper, and I'm an attorney, and I represent concerned citizens of Palos Verdes Estates. I want to point out a couple of things to you. I know you're having a difficult meeting, but I'm sorry. But one of the things is that you're dealing with conflicting state policies, right? You have a housing element that you're supposed to be doing that they want you to be, that your only solution that you're looking at is to remove commercial property. Commercial property is essential, though, neighborhood commercial is essential to meeting the greenhouse gas emission. Remember, we have the governor at the same time, in addition to wanting housing, wants to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And what's going to happen if you remove that neighborhood, local neighborhood commercial, you're going to have people driving farther distances. It actually conflicts with state law. The thing that you may want to look at is the California Environmental Quality Act. Why not do a complete environmental impact report, look at alternatives in that analysis, look at mitigation measures, and you're also able, through that process, to be able to say, we don't think that this is feasible. You still have that discretion. That discretion has not been taken away from you under state law, and in fact, it's actually preserved in a number of the sections. So I think you really could use those laws to your benefit, to be able to do that assessment and to point out these conflicts.
Thank you.
So we can wrap it up.
Yep. Grateful for your comments, thank you.
I just wanted to allay the people's fear about the Lenata Bay patio building. I can speak for the owners and the original builders actually watered the plants in Lenata Bay when it was a nursery, and they believe in giving back to the community. That's why they built the patio building. We've had 30 businesses in the building, many of whom have been there for 60 years. They have no intention of selling, so that's it.
Thank you.
Hello. Thank you for the effort. I know you spend a lot of time trying to figure it out. But may I just say to you that when I drove here from Malaga Cove, as I've been driving through at different times I lived there, but as I drove here, it's as if there's nothing going on. Council does not give notice to people by way of the marquee. We've had this discussion innumerable times, innumerable pushbacks. The roundabout, it has been renamed. We won't go into great detail. The Via Corta corridor is what it's called now. But this was a council that opened that door to greater density. We need to push back. True, we need to be careful. Malaga Cove does not and should not be using City Hall to grandize, to turn into a city center, to become a super mall, or Mr. McGowan's namesake. And that's what it is. And there's a railroad to bankruptcy that this city council has participated in with back decisions, ad hoc committees. We need to end the ad hoc committees. We need transparency, even at the risk of tipping off the housing element. I want to know what's going on, and you, all of you, keep it undercover. There's no way, there's no notice that this town hall is happening, that it's important, and it's not by mistake. So please, let's have well, great that you are online, but most people drive by the plaza and they see book sale. They see the high school thing, but we do not see town hall meeting.
We hear you.
You said that last time, and this is nowhere. You're nowhere. You're holding back the dam by hiding. Don't hide from us.
Ma'am, I've never hidden from you. Not once. I've actually stood in front of your house and spoken with you and helped you many times. I hear you.
You as a person.
Let me make something clear for everyone in the room that's
us.
not familiar with the issue. The original name of the roundabout, as named by the consultants that were involved in the roundabout, was the Via Cora corridor. There is no roundabout. It is not happening.
There is action to develop. So stop. Let's not get into the
There is no show me minutes of a city council meeting where there is action to develop. I'm sorry, but it is not happening. I will not support it or vote for it on my watch. And
great. Will you do a town hall on that? Will you put that on the marquee? That's not as important as this right now. You need to let people.
This is very important.
It's all important,
anyway.
But you let us know nothing unless it's electronic or posted to keep it as quiet as it can be.
We have a great new city manager who is engaged a communication firm. We have heard it loud and clear. The entire city council has prioritized this as very important.
Thank you.
We have.
I appreciate you listening.
Thank you. Hi. I'm a Lunada Bay resident, and thank you for your time and for your work. I also found out about this issue by accident because I tripped on a message on Nextdoor, and I don't understand how that can be. I don't understand how something so important for our city and for our residents is not posted everywhere. Why isn't there a banner on PV Drive West? Why isn't there a banner on Lunada Bay Plaza? Why isn't there a banner at where the roundabout was supposed to be, but it's not going to be? Why isn't there like a thing that instead of says Mary Poppins production at the high school, why isn't there a banner that says, hey, this is what's going on. You need to speak up. Why aren't we informed in a more visual way where everybody can see? Please do that.
Stuff our mailboxes, you put signs out, there's absolutely no notification for this. So you guys are hiding this and don't want to deal with it. You want our money to elect you, and then when something like this comes up, you guys run and hide. There was no notification to the city residents. I suggest you mail every one of them, so we're all notified, and you guys quit running behind the scenes.
Thank you guys.
I accept your comments.
Yes, thank you.
The city planner called me back and I asked, why did I find out about this on...
Excuse me, I have the microphone at this moment, so it's my turn. Thank you. What I wanted to say to you, thank you for being the ad hoc committee. Thank you for publicizing this more than it could have been publicized. That's why we're all here. I don't know why people are here so very late in this process, but thank you for your patience. We have a timeline, we're late, so get it done, and thank you. And you are great on the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So the city planner called me back after I left a message. This was on Thursday of last week. And I said, why did I find out about this meeting on Nextdoor? And she said, oh, well, it should be on the website. So while I was on the phone with her, I looked on the website. It wasn't there. She told me it would be posted by the end of the day. It was not posted by the end of the day, and I didn't see it the next day either. So I didn't look over the weekend. But why? Why? Why is this not, I did not know. I was here. I will be here. But why? It's your responsibility to get this information to us, to tell us about these meetings. You're not showing transparency. And I think the problem here is the contractor that is sitting right up there and the people you're hiring as a consultant. Those are the problems.
I agree with everything you said except for the last point, ma'am, and I hear you.
Thank you. I have time that I can donate to generate awareness in this community, especially in Donata Bay. I have time that I'm going to donate to you to help you communicate this to every single person, not just the people online. Every single one. If we have to go make a banner, if we have to go hang it up, if we have to knock on doors, I donate my time to you to do that in Donata Bay.
Thank you. Thank you for all your input. I know the room cleared a little bit, but sir, we'll take you as last comment. Okay.
I heard later on, or excuse me, earlier on, that we're going to have another meeting to be here. For somebody experienced, I drove by at 6 o'clock tonight, and there were cars parked lots full. Quarter mile that way, quarter mile this way, and there was still parking. And when we finally got here, that was full. The outside was full. Back there was full, but you could not hear you at all. I heard you turn up the thing. Great. Now it's just loud. Still couldn't understand you.
Just for clarification, did you mean the back of the room or actually in the lobby?
In the lobby. Sorry about that. Yeah, but the room was fine, but you couldn't get in it. My question is, this room is too small. Can we get the Palos Verdes gym, or Palos Verdes High School gym? Can I assume that is larger, just to handle everybody? Because this room is too small. I saw people walk in, said, well, I walked right out.
We can certainly coordinate with the school district, yes.
Okay, we just need more room.
Sure.
Okay, well, thank you very much for attending tonight. I really appreciate your input and time. Thank you.